I have to explain a thing. Um, in one of my recent videos, I had talked about being grateful for forgetting all that I know in order to have the human experience. This needs some clarification. So, we must understand that truth in its fullness is beyond our human ability to process often in its fullness. What does that mean? That means that as humans, we tend to compartmentalize information, and that's necessary for us to not become overwhelmed by too much information. It's also necessary for us to be able to live in the reality that we have been experiencing for, several thousand years. So I had said about this, the forgetting. Was the forgetting necessary to have a human experience? It was not. And in the beginning of things, life on this planet, human life on this planet, in the very beginning of that, there was not a total forgetting of who we are. We knew who we were. We knew where we came from. We had bodies that were humanoid in form, however, were much less dense, so they were more they were lighter, didn't need to eat food to survive. That's not to say that we didn't partake in such things for the enjoyment of it, for the merging and blending of energy. So whenever you take a food substance into your body, you are taking that energy into your human form. This is why we speak so much about the quality of the food. Hopefully not to get off on a complete tangent here about this, eat meat or don't eat meat. It's not really as much about to eat meat or not. It's about the life that the animal lived, the way it lived, the way it lived affects the nutritional context of the food, the meat that we then take into ourselves. So there's a merging of these energies. If an animal is traumatized or is confined or is forced to live a life that is unbecoming for the animal, all these words that don't really say exactly what I'm trying to communicate. But if the animal does not live its highest, best life, let's say, then you don't take as high an energy vibration into your energy field when you assimilate that into your vessel, your energy field. So, everything that we come in contact with is energy, and we choose what energies we blend and merge with. Take note, this is a bit of a precaution in a sense, who you couple with, because you're blending energies, and sometimes that's not always beneficial. Sometimes very beneficial for one and not as much for the other, but it is what it is. So back to this. In the beginning of experiences on this earth plane, we had a much more open channel connection to our brothers and sisters on other planets, that because we traveled space, the galaxy, universes, we traveled. The methods by which we did things were so different than here, in these last many years. But I digress. I'm going to try to come back to this. It wasn't necessary to have the human experience in the beginning, okay? But once the earth fell, once the fall of man, right? The earth fell into density. It wasn't just humans, it was the earth and everything. When the frequency dropped, which is the same thing as the fall, the frequency dropped. And I have explained this in a video that I haven't posted yet, but it will be coming out very soon. Momentarily, give me a moment. Let me see if I can remember what it was called. I'm sorry. I don't remember what it was called. Was I wearing this? Yeah, I was wearing this. And I think I had my headphones on, so pink headphones, and I talked about the fall into density. You know, well, we took on density, the earth and us and everything here. So anyway, but in the beginning of things, when we originally came here to play, it was a lot less dense. Okay, so we didn't have the same level of forgetting. However, as the densities increased, the forgetting increased. And so that divine cord, that divine connection was stifled more and more and more as we dropped into heavy, more dense forms, where that light energy, light language almost, that light communication, or Christ divine communication, was not as easily received by the one powering the vessel, right? There's an aspect of us within, without this form. And within, without, what does that mean? Well, the me that is in this form, I am in it, but I am also outside of it. I encompass the form within my energy field. And that energy field is the aspect that I am, which is having the human experience. It's the aspect of my grander self, my higher self. Okay, so in these later times, with the density being so much greater, that forgetting was necessary. To what degree is dependent upon the experience chosen by the one. Okay, so that sounded like stereo instructions. My level of forgetting or remembering when I come into this incarnation is dictated by the plan I have for myself. Whatever my grander self, my higher self, my Christ self wants to glean, experience, take away from this human experience that the Missy is living, right? All of that is dictated before this body is birthed out of a human mother. That's all done beforehand. It's all decided beforehand. We could have this great conversation too about fate and free will, because they both are real. But I wanted to clarify that because it is not necessary for the human experience to have this level of forgetting. But obviously, it was necessary for my human experience in this lifetime. I know that because I don't remember everything, and I certainly didn't for many, many years, I could tell you briefly about, I can tell you briefly. I don't really, I don't know if I want to share that, but I might, because what does it really matter? The Missy attempted suicide twice before the age of 16. The only people that know that are the ones that I have told. Because, after, was it 2 or 3 times? Honestly, it might have been 3 times. And I think the third time unsuccessful because, I was doing it in ways that no one would necessarily know. Okay. And I'm not going to get into the details because that's a very low energy that I don't want to revisit. For all of you who think that, Jesus is going to be reborn into human form, he's out. Blessed be, he's out. Christ, the second coming is upon us, and it is happening through us. That's just a little information. Be the Christ that you wish to see, because you are. Okay. So I'm going to say 3 times because I think the third time, the number 3 seems to be significant in this life experience for me. The third time, yes, I'll say that, I tore the bag off of my head because that was the means by which I was attempting to end this life experience. So, grasping and tore open the bag so I could breathe. And I realized that what was the point? What was the point of, what did I really want to get out of it? I wasn't telling anyone I was doing it. I obviously didn't have the guts to go through with it because, 3 times I was not successful. And so I just kind of realized that there was no point. There just was no point to it because I wasn't going to do the things that, I wasn't willing to do the things that would have made it certain. And so, let me pause right here. Sorry, I digress and I lost train of thought. So when I was, I think before the last time I attempted to prematurely leave, I think I was like 15, and I remember being outside in the moonlight, in the dark, burning the trash. Now, for those of you that grew up in a city, you might not know what this is. There's a large barrel, metal, and we would put our trash in this barrel and we would light it on fire and we would burn our trash. And it was a winter night. There was snow on the ground, and we used to hang our clothes on a clothesline to dry outside. And it would get so cold sometimes in the wintertime that the jeans, if you were lucky enough to own jeans, would freeze while they hung on the clothesline. And I remember watching the trash burn in the barrel and looking at the frozen jeans on the clothesline. And I had done this experiment before, so I knew full well that if I took those jeans down off that line, I could get them to stand up on their own because they were so stiff. Anyway, and I'm looking at the stars and I'm looking at the moon and I'm yelling to Jesus, yelling, what is this for? I know that I'm here for a reason. I know there's a reason. What is it for? So I still don't fully know what that answer is. But so from the time I was very young, I could sense that there was a greater me. There was a greater me than this person I present to the world, my person, right? My person, the Missy. There was something greater. There was something else, something always there, calm and peaceful there. Now, I had some traumatic experiences as a child. And during one of those traumatic experiences, I was out of body. So I had an out of body experience. And I would say that it was something similar to a near-death experience, how people describe NDEs. During that experience, I had a personal, private communion with the one we call Jesus the Christ. Okay? And I was shocked out of my body. There was what was going on in that moment, what was happening to the body. I couldn't stay in it. So I ejected, like I left the body, and I saw the body beneath me. And I was very young when this occurred. I might have been 3, maybe 4, maybe. And I saw the body there, and I was a little scared when it happened. I could sense there was a part of me that wanted me to be frightened. There was this strange, like, how is that the body that there, and whatever I am is here looking at it. There it is. I can see it, you know. And I was watching a movie. I could see what was occurring. I was still aware of the sensations the body was experiencing, but I wasn't in it. It was there in front of me, you know, beneath me, as I seemed to exist in a nowhere space, like I was nowhere, observing, watching. And then this man was there. And I knew him. And I was still the child, even though I was apart from my body. I was still a child. And he held out his arms to me, and we were sitting, it was like you can't make out everything, and yet everything is so clear. But we were sitting, and I was on his lap in his arms, and he had these long white sleeves. They were sort of large at the hand. They kind of were wider at the hand and long enough to almost cover the hands. Like maybe just the fingertips would be seen. And I was in his arms, And we were watching what was occurring with the body, my little body. And I remember feeling like, shouldn't I feel embarrassed that he is seeing this, what I am seeing, that he is observing this also, what is happening with this body? And there was a part of me that felt embarrassed and shameful about it. And he spoke to me and he said that he told me I could not be hurt, that was just my body, that I belonged to him, that no one could hurt me because I belonged to him. That was so comforting. It was so very comforting. So comforting. And I didn't know who he was, but I knew that I trusted him with absolute trust, that he gave me a feeling, a sense of safety that I did not feel in my body. But it was a wonderful experience. And ever since I allowed myself to remember that, because I put that away for a long time. And when I allowed myself to remember, oh my gosh, I had this experience. It wasn't until many years later that I came to know who he was, and it was the one we think of as Jesus. But I didn't know who that was yet. It wasn't until years later when I saw a picture in a church and I asked my grandmother who that man is. Grammy, who is that man? Who is that man? Now I will say the image, what the eyes see did not look exactly like the one that I was in communion with. But the feeling, the intention of the image was what I recognized as that, as him, was the intention. And so I think, I have talked to people, friends, over the years about things I remember thinking when I was a child, thoughts that I had and that I was aware of having when I was a child. And they would say to me, like, that's just really unusual for a child to have thoughts like that. But I did have thoughts like that. And one of the things that catapulted my spiritual awakening was when I had to start facing some of these traumas from my childhood. But I'm so grateful for them. And the reason is, through that trauma, I was gifted something amazing. I was gifted that out-of-body experiences. I was gifted a true experience of being with Jesus in this lifetime. I was the child that he took in his arms and comforted. When I was healing my traumas, and I had to go really deep and really, hardcore into them, like no layer left unpeeled, and come to terms with all of that. And the majority of it, to speak truly, the majority of it was shame and guilt. Shame and guilt for what I should have done, how I should have been, which has served me so well. Because now today, I can say to you that guilt is one of the greatest control mechanisms that we experience here. Overcoming that, or letting go of it in acceptance of what has occurred, took being grateful. It wasn't until I could be grateful for the gifts that were hidden within those experiences. I know that that was written into my plan. Once I truly accepted what had occurred and stopped judging it and accepted where I was and who I was, and that was all part of how I got here, I remembered being given the choice. So, before I came into this life as this lifetime, my Missy lifetime was being planned, I was given a choice. For whatever it was I wanted to have, learn, assimilate, the choice I had was to be abused or be an abuser. Okay. And I remember making the choice that, because as it was stated to me, what it was I wanted to take away from this life experience could be learned, could be experienced by either being abused or being the abuser in this specific form that I'm talking about. And I chose to be abused. I said, I will be the abused. Because even then, I did not think I could handle the role of the abuser. I didn't think I could handle. I knew the guilt and the shame would be enough to be the abused. I didn't think I could handle the guilt of being the abuser of another in this way. Now, I will say I have not always, yes, that's true. I have played the attacker role myself, and I have played the victim role myself in this lifetime in other ways, as an adult, in adult scrapping ways, like husband and wife kind of fights, and I remember one of my relationships, there was an abuse dynamic in a adult physical, conflict, hostility kind of way. And I can remember pushing buttons. I can remember pushing his buttons because I thought if I got him to hit me, I could hit him back and justify and feel justified in doing it. So can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? That I realized in myself that I was instigating a fight or escalating a fight so that I would feel justified in hitting him. But I only felt justified in hitting him if I got him to hit me first. So Now this, I will tell you, was, more than 20 years ago now. And so here I am, ego present, trying to smooth over and say, oh, but I was young. Oh, but I was, okay, I was young. And I didn't know when it was happening, what it was that was happening. It was not until I withdrew my energy from that relationship and began the healing process. And again, here we go, because I am grateful for that relationship. Because when I left that situation and divorced, I began a healing journey. I began a deep psychological study of myself. Why I did what I did, why I felt what I felt, what was going on in there. And through that, abusive situation, and as I said, I did get to play the abuser in part because I knew how to push buttons, and I did. That's a subject for a totally different time. But when you have been in a relationship such as that, if you do not heal it, you will repeat it. And so I did not want to repeat it. So I went into hardcore, deep healing. And it was to take off every mask. Take off every mask. Everyone that would show up, I had to take it off, and I had to really look at what it was. I had to really look at what was going on there. But that led me to opening my eyes to the things that occurred in my childhood that I had put away and didn't want to open that door, right? But through this healing, it was inevitable. I had to look. No skeletons left in the closet. I needed to be 100% authentic. I needed to, if not to anybody else, to myself. I needed to. So those childhood traumas came to light, but with them came the other experience that I had forgotten about, because when you put it away, you put it away, and it all goes with it. So you throw the baby out with the bathwater, in a sense. There was a time in that marriage when even then I was seeking Jesus. I was seeking him. I was reading the Bible. I was going to church. I was really seeking him because I was very unhappy in the marriage. And I think I was most unhappy with who I was becoming in the marriage, who I was becoming. And I didn't like who I was becoming. So I can remember one day the husband and I had a fight. And I can't tell you what words I said to him, but they must have been cruel. Because I was in great contemplation over what I had said to him while my mom was driving us. I had gone to visit my mom, I guess, because I needed a break. I needed some time away from the husband to get my bearings straight. And so I think I had gone I don't know, just for a couple days or something, to my mom's house. And I was going to work with her that day. She was taking me to work with her that day, and I already had my first child, who was an infant, if I remember correctly. So it was a long ride to my mom's work. It was like an hour. She drove an hour to work and an hour home from work for, many, many years. Many, many years. God love her for it. And on the way there, I was contemplating this argument, this fight that the husband and I had had. And I heard the voice of Jesus. I'm going to say that was the first time since my out-of-body experience as a child that I heard the voice of Jesus. Loud, but not demanding, but loud enough, not in my ears, in my all, in my all. And I heard him say, no matter what you would have done to me, I never would have treated you the way you treated him. Oh boy. No matter what you would have done to me, I would never have treated you the way you treated him. And it was not. And in that message there was no nuance of guilt, of condemnation, of scolding. There was none of that. It was all compassion. It was all compassion. There was no scorning in it. There was no, it was complete and utter compassion. The feeling that came with the words was, I love you. I love you. See yourself. See your behavior. See how this is not you. The message was undeniably compassionate and still beseeching me to come back to who I am. But those were the words, were the ones that I told you, were the words. But the feeling that came with the words was so much more, such as telepathy, right? So much more than language, so much more than just words. And so for me in this lifetime, the forgetting was necessary. It has been told to me through many different sources. Sorry, I'm itching. Trying not to itch, but itching. It was told to me from many sources that children today are being born with much greater awareness, much more of their memory intact from the higher self. That many will remember their past lives right away. They'll come in with the memory of them. They'll come in with the understanding that this body is a communication device that we really should appreciate. We really should appreciate it. I think to myself, I like food. I I like to sample all kinds of foods. I think that's probably one of the greatest gifts of being a human being on this planet, is the variety of foods that we have to partake of. The savory and the sweet and I mean, amazing. I like to cook too. I do a lot of like country, home style country cooking, you could say. Lots of gravies and sauces and that kind of thing. Lots of flavor. I mean, to tell you, there are places where the food is like eating a rice cake. And I don't mean a flavored rice cake. I mean like a plain rice cake, no salt. Like it's well, that's good. Yeah, so I'm just being, there's a communication happening right now, and sharing of information. And the message that just came through was, that's the difference between the human experience and other experiences. And again, this lends itself to the reason for the decline into density. Because the denser we became, the more energy variations we were able to experience. So when you are, okay, and that's the difference between the plain rice cake and all of the foods that we have here, okay? When you're at a level of an angel, let's say, the angelic realms, there are much fewer variations of experiential opportunities, because the energy fluctuation, the density, does not allow for as much fluctuation, ups and downs. The polarity is not there. Okay, so when you don't have that polarity, you don't have the variation of experience, which even the emotions, like to go from that really heightened state of bliss to the misery of heartbreak, pain, for example, even pain in the body. And I think I spoke of this before in one of the videos, but pain is a sensation. There are these sensations in the body. So last night, I'm having this poison issue, which I think is beginning to get better. I think it is. Either that or we just found a really good concoction to apply. But I was in the shower, and I take very hot showers. So I was letting this very, very hot water hit certain spots in my body where there is a massive reaction of this poison rash, okay? And I noticed that with the very hot water, the itching actually increased. The itching was intensified, like massively. And I would hold the part of my body underneath that hot water until I no longer felt that itching, until I held it there until it changed to more of a burning sensation. And it was very difficult to do. But if I sit here and I look at that, when you're not in a body, you can't have experiences like that. You can't feel things like that. And even though I would say none of it was pleasant to me, it was still an experience that I couldn't have had without the body, And the same is true. So as intense as the unpleasant sensations can be, the opposite of that is here as well because of polarity, Some people say duality, but I'm thinking it's more like polarity. Anyway, so you have the really intense, unpleasant sensations, but then you also have the really intense, enjoyable, beautiful sensations. So because we have been on this dense earth plane, we have been able to have the highest appreciation for the things that brought us good vibes, good feelings, good sensations, uplifting and joyous, and all of those things, because we have experienced the opposite of that. So because we've gone through that, we will retain that appreciation. It's like saying, if you've heard anyone say, when you know nothing but love, you want to know something that isn't that. Because you just want to know you just want to have experiences. Well, if all you've ever experienced was love and bliss and joy, why would anyone want to leave, right? Because why would anyone want to leave? Because you do not know anything but that. So you can't imagine something that's not that. Anyway, so I'm going to pause for a second. So I'm sorry, I did get off on a tangent there and I totally digress. The whole reason for this video was to clarify that there was not always and is not always a need to forget. It depends on the density you're incarnating into, which also is influenced by the life plan that you want to have for whatever reason you're having the life experience. So, though for some of us at certain times, at certain points, certain lifetimes, it was necessary to have a higher degree of forgetting so that we could have the joy of remembering, so that we could have the human experience through the one that didn't know that they were divine. So, it's hard to play the bad guy if you know that you're an angel. It's hard to be the abuser. It's hard to be the murderer if you know you are the angel. So a forgetting is necessary, right? It's hard to have the experience of being victim. You can't experience victimhood if you remember that you are the power of God incarnate in a body. So in order to have the experiences, the limitations are placed on the mind of the child of God, we should say, in a sense. The mind of the child of God blocks, limits, There are other words that have been used. Blocks is a good way to put it, but there are other words that have been used to point to these limitations. But it was to keep the self on course, to have the experiences that had been planned and set up by the greater self. So, yes. In peace and love, may you be blessed.